Hey everybody, I hope you guys are all healthy and safe. So in today's video, we're taking a look at Apple's Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro. Now, this was a bit of a surprise because Apple had told us reviewers that this keyboard wouldn't be available until May. But somehow, before April has ended, the keyboard is ready to go. Anyway, let's take a look at the keyboard. Okay, so this is it, the Magic Keyboard. So from the outside and from in-hand feel, this is very similar to the Smart Keyboard that most iPad Pro users are probably very familiar with. But the biggest noticeable difference right off the bat is the Magic Keyboard is quite a bit heavier. In fact, I weighed it on my scale and this thing weighs 1.5 pounds, a little more than 1.5 pounds. It came out to about like 700 grams actually. So it's definitely not that light, but you're getting a lot more hardware than the Smart Keyboard. So when you open it up, you'll see that the hinge, it's pretty firm. I mean, it needs to be because this is gonna prop up the iPad Pro, like elevate it off the air. And you see right here is the USB-C port. This USB-C port, it's for you to charge the iPad. Now you're wondering, there's already a port on the iPad Pro, so why would you need to charge here? Apple's idea is that if you charge here, then the USB-C port of the iPad Pro can be left free for your other stuff. By other stuff, I mean dongles, because you will have to use a dongle if you're doing real work with the iPad Pro. So now putting the iPad into the case is really easy. Same as before really. You have the three pogo pins over here, magnetic pogo pins. You just have to line it up and it just stays on. Let's close the whole thing just to see how it feels and looks in the hand first. So it's slightly thicker than how the iPad Pro used to be in this case, and it's quite a bit heavier too. Let's weigh it right now actually. So I used to be a weightlifter, and when you take weightlifting seriously, you have to weigh your foods and stuff. So that's what I was doing. I was one of those ridiculous people who had like a whole week of lunch boxes, and I would measure all my chicken and broccoli. So you can see it is just about 3 pounds. All right, now let's get to the fun part. So one of the things I've already noticed is that when you lift up the iPad Pro, it takes a little bit more force now. It takes a little bit more effort. So it's like you're opening up a laptop lid. Now once connected, you see the iPad Pro is elevated off the tabletop just a little bit. This design is quite ingenious, and to be honest, I don't think I've seen it before. I think all previous keyboard cases, the tablet just sat onto the keyboard case just like that. And as you can see, Apple's designed it pretty well. It's firm, like when you touch on it, it does not wobble that much when you're messing with the touchscreen. But if you want to take it off, it's also pretty easy. But when it stays on pretty firmly. So once you've connected, everything works like a laptop. So the trackpad, when you move the trackpad, then the cursor appears. If you're not touching the trackpad for like a few seconds, the cursor disappears and then it goes back to like almost like a traditional iPad display. But as soon as your finger's on the trackpad, the cursor appears. And from here, it really just feels like you're using a laptop because the trackpad is pretty responsive. Even though it's quite small, Apple has fine-tuned it that I can move around pretty easily, and the cursor actually snaps into place when you're close to an icon or a button. So it helps a little bit with just getting to the area that you want to get to. Okay, now let's look at the keys now. You'll notice that the keys are backlit, and they're also slightly larger than the keys on the Smart Keyboard. So this is a little bit better typing experience just because you have more space, more room to work with. And although key travels, I would say it's about exactly the same at 1 millimeter. Like I like the key travel on this quite well too. So both of these give me pretty good travel. These keys have a little bit more of a bounce. When you press into them, the keys bounce back, gives you more of a tactile feedback. And I am a very fast typer, and this keyboard is about as good as it gets for a laptop portable keyboard. I went on typingtest.com earlier and I scored 96 words per minute with 2 mistakes. So the adjusted speed was 94 words per minute. That's pretty good, although my peak speed with a real keyboard like on a desktop is actually 103, 104. So slightly slower than my peak speed, but this is really good. Now the trackpad supports all the gestures that you might be used to from using a Mac. You swipe up with 3 fingers to exit out of an app to go back home. You can switch between apps with 3 fingers. And then when you're in an app, you use 2 fingers, slide up and down for scrolling. Now there are some iPad specific gestures too. Like for example, if you hit the command button and the space bar, it brings up the search. This is how you open up specific apps that you want without needing to go back out to the home screen. Now, I've been using this keyboard all day and I've already written a couple of articles on it. I can say the experience is pretty close to a standard laptop. I've really very rarely had to touch the screen, and that's what Apple's aiming for with this keyboard and the new iPad OS software that allows advanced cursor trackpad controls. Now, even though the Magic Keyboard draws power from the iPad Pro, I would say for the most part, I haven't really noticed any hit in my battery life. That's because there's really not that much to power other than the backlit keys. Now, if you're wondering about the angle of the iPad in terms of how you can prop it up, there are multiple angles that you can adjust, and for the most part, it stays still pretty firmly. Now, again, when you touch on the screen, it moves a little bit, but it's not like it's wobbly very badly. It's not like the iPad's in danger of falling off. So I would say this is a pretty well-built design. Anyway, so that about wraps it up for my first look at the Magic Keyboard. Now, personally, I like this a lot, but I know what some of you guys are going to say. This is too damn expensive because Apple is selling this Magic Keyboard, the 12.9-inch version that I'm using here, for $350 US. And then the smaller 11-inch version goes for $300. And some of you guys are going to say, you can get a whole Windows tablet with a keyboard for $350. And you'd be right. But to be honest, if you are using a tablet as your real work machine to do video editing and do illustrations, graphic works, the iPad Pro is just so much better than any of the Windows and Android tablet from Samsung, Microsoft, or Huawei right now. And I'm not just saying this because I'm an Apple fanboy, because I'm not an Apple fanboy. I use an Android phone like 90% of the time because I like Android overall more than iOS in terms of my smartphone. But on desktop computing, to do real work, to edit videos, edit photos, the iPad Pro is just so much more fluid, so much faster and more powerful than any Android tablet I've tested. So I think for people like that, for people who are already invested in the iPad Pro ecosystem, they will probably buy this in a heartbeat without issues. Now, if you really cannot stomach the price, there are probably going to be third-party options, that probably steals this design maybe in a few months. So you can wait for that. But if you want the official Apple package, it's not cheap, but I think a lot of people will shell out the money for it. Anyway, so that's about it. Once again, stay healthy, stay safe, and if you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to my channel or follow me on Instagram at Ben's Gadget Reviews. Take care, stay healthy. Thanks for watching.